For centuries, Vikings have sailed abroad from their home Scandinavia in search of loot, slaves, fame, and land. The Norse had a wide influence, having settled in the British Isles, Iceland, Greenland, European continent, and even Nova Scotia. Trade routes extend from Scandinavia through Russia, Greece, Italy, North Africa, Britain, and even Western Asia. It has long been believed that Newfoundland marked the extent of the Vikings' voyages, that Leif Erikson was the first true European discoverer of Americas, and no other Viking ventured so far from a Scandinavian home. Yet new archaeology evidence from the unlikely site of Masonboro Island, North Carolina, reveals a shocking truth that may put Leif's claim to the test. In March 2016, a group of college students stumbled upon an artifact that may change everything we know about the first European settlements in Americas.
We were just walking around when I took on what looked like a wooden plank. After looking at it some more, we believed it to resemble a wooden dragon's head. We tried to pull it out of the sand, but it wouldn't budge. That's when we agreed to call the experts. We felt that this thing might be a lot older and a lot larger than we first thought, and it turns out we were right.
When archaeologists arrived at the site, they were awestruck at the students' discovery. Strong winds had revealed a serpent's head made from oak that had been preserved beneath what appeared to be natural sand dunes. The archaeologists first performed a surface survey to determine the size of the site. Using a total station, they mapped out the exposed artifacts. During Phase 2 of the excavation, the site was divided into 1 by 1 meter test units and excavated using the natural sand layers. Sand was removed from each test unit and sifted through a quarter-inch screen to catch small artifacts. Once the feature was fully excavated, it was confirmed to be a ship, but not of American descent. The serpent's head and Norse-style engravings found alongside the ship were strong evidence that it was a Viking longship.
Hi, I'm Caleb Bryson. I'm a cultural anthropologist and Nordic timber expert, and today we've come to examine the remains of a Viking civilization, more specifically, a Viking longship. The remains of this longship, made of oak, were miraculously preserved in a sand dune for over 1,000 years here on Masonboro Island. The question we must ask ourselves is, what were these Vikings doing here on Masonboro Island, and how did they get here in the first place? And more importantly, what caught the eye of these hardy seafaring people as they came here to Masonboro? Hopefully today, through the course of our excavations at the Masonboro site, we'll uncover why these peoples are here, and we'll learn more about the Nordic people in the process.
Hi, I'm Shirley Riddle, a Norse mythology expert and an assistant excavator here at this Masonboro site. Masonboro Island has very few natural resources, so it would have been extremely difficult for any inhabitants to have survived there. There are hurricanes, the land is dominated by sand, and the only food available is marine fauna. There is little variation in the flora, and the island is highly exposed to extreme climate. Meanwhile, not far in the distance is the coastal mainland, which is better protected and has a lot more available resources to the inhabitants there. So why did the Vikings choose the Masonboro site instead of the better choice of the nearby mainland?
These questions remain unanswered until more startling discoveries were made. Days later, archaeologists uncovered human remains both beneath and around the longship. The longship was in fact a Viking burial mound. A 40-year-old man was buried alongside iron axe heads, remnants of a silk cap, garment clasps, stone spearheads, torches, and a bracelet forged of various precious metals. Beside him was a woman aged in her late 40s. Along with her were dress clasps, silk gown, bracelets, a pendant, and a golden hairpin. The remains of 2 individuals were found nearby. Both of these individuals were in their late 20s and only bore combs made of bone. DNA analysis verified that these 2 women were of Native American descent.
Back on the Masonboro site, we have uncovered what appear to be the graves of 2 Native American women. Beside of them, we have uncovered a Viking chieftain and his wife. The Native American women were buried only with combs, possibly indicating that they were the slaves of the chieftain. The fact that they were buried in such close proximity to each other indicates that there was contact between the Norsemen and the natives of coastal North Carolina throughout the course of the Viking occupation. These Norsemen likely arrived here as pagans because slavery was outlawed with the advent of Christianity. This establishment on Masonboro, as short-lived as it may have been, existed prior to Leif Erikson's voyage to Newfoundland. Looking back at the pendant found on the noble woman's neck, which was shaped like a cross but found upside down, indicates that she likely was a follower of Thor, a Viking god of thunder, and this pendant likely was Thor's hammer Mjolnir. I would say that it is quite possible that this settlement was occupied as early as the 9th century and that these Norsemen came from either Norway or Denmark. At this time, Christianity and paganism were still very much at odds, and this is why we see such conflicting grave goods.
However, expert Shirley Riddle disagrees.
To assume that this settlement existed prior to Leif Erikson's voyage to the New World is largely speculation. A Thor's hammer pendant and the presence of slaves indicate a prevalence in pagan beliefs, but we must bear in mind that at this time, Christianity and Norse paganism were not polarized. There are plenty of instances in history when Christ was added to the pantheon of Norse gods. While he was still considered as a lesser and foreign god, he was not always disregarded as false. What we can assume is that this settlement existed anywhere from the 10th through the 11th century, when Christianity was only just becoming law in Norway and Iceland. This time frame would be relatively contemporary to Leif Erikson's voyage.
Further excavation revealed post holes in the sand. This indicates the existence of a small wooden structure near the coast opposite of the mainland, atop a midden of shells, broken stone spearheads, nets, and fish bones. Carbon dating later showed that the fish bones were around 1,000 years old. There is a consensus among archaeologists that this structure was once a fish market from where the Norse traded with their Native American neighbors.
It is highly likely that these Norsemen were living completely off of marine fauna, and because there were no useful metals available, they were instead using stone tools to help them catch and consume their food. Since similar stones were not found anywhere else on the islands, those stones had to come from elsewhere. Thus, either the Norsemen were trading with the natives or raiding their settlements along the coast and taking back loot and slaves to the island.
We assume that the Norsemen of Masonboro are using a bartering system rather than a monetary system due to a lack of items that could be used as coins. Remains indicate that many settlers were fishermen, weaponsmiths, and carpenters by profession. We found post holes across the island indicating that the Norsemen lived in small wooden huts of a circular shape. We can assume that this is because of the harsh climate and lack of natural resources. They could not have gotten their wood anywhere else but the mainland. It appears that they were successful in looting their neighbors, but certainly not in establishing a settlement on the mainland.
In my opinion, what we see here is a Norse settlement that failed largely because they just did not have the resources to survive in such a harsh coastal environment. In our excavation, we found several sunken ships off the coast of the island, which is evidence for the harsh coastal hurricanes destroying what ships they had. We continued on to find a few Norse iron weapons alongside the coastal mainland, and I believe that we can safely assume that these Norsemen did not intentionally plan on staying in the Americas. Rather, in my opinion, they wanted safe passage that they could procure enough wood to rebuild or repair their ships on a return trip to Scandinavia. Following the excavation, the sunken shipwreck that we discovered became property of the United States government in accordance with the Abandoned Shipwrecks Act. NAGPRA, the law relating to burials of Native Americans, had no effect in this case because the Native American slaves that we discovered did not belong to a federally recognized tribe. All of the artifacts, features, and ecofacts that we discovered were exchanged between museums before finally resting in the Smithsonian where they rightfully belonged.